stuff. So thanks everyone for tuning in today. I'm really excited about today's topic. I hope to clear up a lot of confusion, maybe for some of you new health coaches who are kind of confused about how much do I tell, how much do I suggest, how hands-off do I need to be as a coach. I know I hear this from students all the time, and I've been talking a lot about in my work, in these trainings, in our Facebook community, about how we have to be not the expert, not the authority. So I talk a lot about what we can't do as coaches or what we shouldn't do as coaches. So what I really want to do today is focus in on what we can do. What are those a little bit more directive things maybe that we can do, but still being client-centered and still being effective and embracing the coach approach and the coach mindset. So if any of you are feeling like, what's the difference between suggesting and telling? How hands-off do I need to be? Things like, but in my training program, they told me I should give action steps at the end of a session. Aren't I supposed to tell my clients what to do and what their action steps are? So I know this can be really, really confusing. And one of the main reasons it's so confusing is that likely before your health coach training, you just as a human being out there in the world, we're probably giving a lot of advice and giving suggestions and recommendations to your friends and family members because they were probably coming to you looking for that kind of advice because you're someone who is healthy and well and really living all of these holistic health and wellness lifestyle aspects that many people are really interested in. So because of that, then you get into your health coach training program and you realize, coaching is actually a little bit different. It's a whole different way of communicating and being with my client. And so that's really what I want to help clarify today for you. Some of the things that we can do as coaches, some of the ways we can be more directive, yet still being really, really client-centered and effective as coaches. So I've got 8 tips for you that I want to share, ways that we can be more directive. But before we get into that, I want to talk a little bit about the coaching spectrum. So I've got that here. Hopefully you can all see it. I just have to figure out how to get in there and explain it. So I shared this in our Facebook group this week. And let's see if I can pull back a little bit. Yeah, that might work a little bit better. All right. Maybe I can do this. Here we go. Okay, so on the coaching spectrum, if you can see, and actually I think it's better if I hold it down here, we have 2 ends of the spectrum. Up on this end, we have non-directive. So that would really be, you're kind of just sitting there and listening, you're just very hands-off. We call that pulling. So we are really just helping the person figure out their own and solve their own problems. On the other end of the spectrum, down here, we have directive pushing, which is pushing someone toward a solution. So we're solving the problem for the client. So this you would be more of a mentor, a consultant, an expert, an authority. And then up here, is more in the direction of coaching. But really the cool thing about the spectrum is that, up here, what I say is that we're using a mix of all of these non-directive and directive ways of being with our clients. So over here you can see too that this red arrow points in this direction and says that, really if we're moving in this direction, we're having increasing responsibility as the coach. So we're having less of sort of empowerment of the client when we're doing this kind of thing. So I really wanted you all to have a nice clear picture of this coaching spectrum and to know that we're blending, we're mixing a lot of these different things. And actually maybe I should just read these out for you. So up in the top here we have listening to understand, then we have reflecting, we have reframing, summarizing, asking questions, making suggestions. I'm seeing if I can read these off the screen, giving feedback, offering advice, giving advice, instructing, so that's like educating and telling at the very end there. So that coaching spectrum, so important for you to just kind of figure out, where do you fall? Are you more in the directive end of things, a lot of directing, a lot of telling and advising, or are you more on the other end, kind of just sitting back, maybe a little timid and shy, not quite sure how to, use some of those other skills and coaching techniques in your practice? So I hope that's helpful. I know that was a little awkward there, me with my prop, but I hope you were able to see it, and I hope that just gives you a little bit of understanding about, that spectrum that we have. So what I really feel is like everyone as a coach, we have to start to develop our own style, our own way of being. So like I was saying, if you're sort of shy and timid on one end, maybe you need to be a little bit more directive. Whereas, if you're finding yourself to be a little bit more authoritative, educating all the time, wanting to have all those answers, maybe you need to lean a little bit more to that non-directive end of things. So I think that can just provide some perspective that there's lots of room to play within those two ends of the spectrum. So what I want to do now is share with you some of the ways that we can really be effective coaches, and 8 ways that we can really show up being a little bit more directive. So maybe these are things that you haven't really thought about. These are really the things that we need to get good at as coaches, the value that we provide, the skills that we use. So I'll share those with you now. So the first one is obviously the number one thing that we do is we ask lots of high mileage questions, open-ended questions, and so we're directing in that way, right? We're directing with our questions. We're not directing to a particular answer, but we are asking a question to open up possibilities, to have our client explore and go deep. So we do ask lots of great high mileage questions. That's the number one thing we do. Number 2 thing is we share observations. So you might not think about this one, but this is all about what we notice. It's about saying what is so. What are the patterns we're noticing? What are the observations we're having about our client, their strengths, their values, the obstacles, the challenges, the stories they may have, the limiting beliefs? So we share observations, and couple ways that we can do that, and language that we could use, and I've got my notes here. If you see me looking down, I'm just checking out my notes. So ways that we can share our observations would be saying things like, what I see you doing here is, I'm hearing a lot of shoulds, is that your gremlin speaking? So I'm noticing the gremlin. My gut is telling me something. I'm getting an intuitive hit here. Do you mind if I share that with you? May also be, I'm noticing a pattern. I'm noticing you keep repeating this one word over and over again. What does that mean to you? So we say what's so, we share our observations about the client. So that's a really important one. The number 3 thing that we do is we challenge our clients, right? We believe that they have the answers inside of them, that they have strengths, that they have values, and we really want them to tap into their inner wisdom. So we challenge them to stretch and reach, maybe beyond where they thought that they could go. So maybe your client says something like, they want to reduce stress, and so they say, well, I'm going to try one meditation, one 5-minute meditation per week. So we may say, well, that sounds great as a start. We like to start small, but maybe we say, is that one 5-minute meditation a week going to give you the result you need or that you're looking for? Is that really going to help reduce that stress? So number 1, we're just checking in and making sure that that's the right goal. But I think, what we're really thinking about as the coach here is the client could probably do a little bit more, right? So we want to help our clients stretch and grow. So we might, if they say, well, yeah, I don't actually think that that's going to totally reduce all my stress. So we may say, well, what would feel right? Could you increase that number a little bit? Could you increase the length of time that you're meditating for? Is that going to be a way to really, boost it up a little bit? So we want to help our clients stretch into those stretch goals, but really making sure that they're still doable. So we're challenging our clients in lots of different ways. Number 4 is we're inviting exploration. We're inviting that curiosity and that experimental mindset, right? So we're really always wanting to have our client explore and get curious. So we're directing them in that way a little bit, directing them to experimentation and curiosity. We want to open them up to those possibilities. So we could say things like, how could you explore this further? What would you be willing to try and maybe experiment with for a week? What would be worth exploring here? How could you get even more curious about this? What's another perspective here that you could explore? So that exploration, we're really encouraging them to try on new things, experiment with them, go deeper, get curious just to see what happens. And then they can decide what they're going to do with that information. The fifth thing we do is we share and we suggest tools to our clients. So we do make suggestions. I know in some other videos you may think that I'm saying we never give suggestions, but there's a way to give suggestions, and I did a whole mini training on that. So there's a way to do it. And yes, one thing that we can suggest are tools with our clients. So things like food diaries, circles and wheels. So the circle of life, the wheel of life, all kinds of different circles and wheels are great exploration tools for our clients. Maybe we want to help them tap into their strengths and values. So we might share some assessment tools with them. Biometric assessments, so that they have those biometric markers of, baseline, and then making shifts over time and tracking their progress to see if those biometric measures move at all as they make health and wellness changes. So sharing some of those. We might also share worksheets with them, like around their vision or their values. Tracking and time management tools are also important. So as the coach, we hold and own the process. So any tools that can help move the coaching process along and help the client explore are great things that we can suggest for our clients. So absolutely, we can suggest and share tools with our clients. The other thing that we can suggest are resources. So additional resources the client might want to go to get more information. Health and wellness, lifestyle websites, articles, books, blogs. All of those resources are really, really important. And again, you're probably more familiar with those having been already in the health and wellness field. So, have you checked out, perhaps your client's struggling with prediabetes and, the doctor is worried that they might have to go on medication. So maybe you said, have you checked out your National Diabetes Association website to see what their recommendations are? So if there's an illness or a disease or an association that's related to whatever your client might be working on, you could direct them there. So suggesting those resources is also a great thing that we can do. That's fairly directive. The seventh thing we can do is providing structure. And I touched on this a little bit with, we as the coach are providing the structure and the process of the coaching methodology and facilitating that process for our clients. So we absolutely provide structure. So we provide structure in every session. So chances are, we've got a welcome, we've got a accountability check-in, we do some process coaching, then we do some action planning and accountability, and then we do a wrap-up. So, we're providing structure to the session. You also might have structure when it comes to your 6-month program or your 3-month program or your group program. So for me, I like to use the first few sessions as foundation sessions to do this exploration, to really start to get to know the client and map out their roadmap and their goals. So doing that in the first 3 sessions, I'm providing structure around that. So providing structure, providing some of those tools, checking in halfway, providing some prep structure before each session. Those are really incredible and important ways that we are directing the coaching process. So providing structure is really, really important. And then number 8 is we can also share what's worked for our other clients. So that's a great way to, invite new possibilities and new options for our clients. So we may say something like, my previous clients have had really great success with tracking their progress, over the weeks. I have a tool for that. Are you interested in learning about that? We may say something like, a lot of my previous clients have had really great success when they actually put in their calendar and block off time to work on their wellness goals. Does that sound like something that could work for you or be beneficial for you? So absolutely sharing what's worked with others to see if this client might want to adapt a similar strategy or process or action step in their own health and wellness plan. So those are 8 ways and things that we can do that are actually more directive, right? It's not just totally hands-off. We are directing in a certain way around these things. So I think this provides us with so much leeway and opportunity about what we can do as coaches without being the expert, without telling our clients what to do. These are just such great tools and skills to start building. So as I'm saying in the intro, if you're a newbie or maybe an inexperienced coach, and maybe you're someone who's fairly timid and shy and introverted, and you haven't developed these skills yet, maybe you're going to shy away from doing this. So then you would be on that, that top end of the spectrum where you're kind of just sitting and listening, and you're not actually being very directive or engaged with your client. So if you're, someone who's like that, you may want to adapt a little bit more of these directive measures. But on the other hand, at that bottom end of the spectrum with the telling and the advising, being the authority, that can show up in a lot of different ways. And I just wanted to share with you what that might look like from a health coaching perspective. So I've got 8 kind of ways that really, really directive coach could show up like. So of course, they're acting more like a consultant and an expert, the authority, rather than being a coach. They're going to give the client all kinds of solutions instead of coaching the client to find their own solutions. So they're actually giving the solutions. Chances are the more directive coach is going to actually have a ready-made, one-size-fits-all wellness program for the client. So, lots of those are out there, wellness programs, but they're not coaching. So again, just to make that differentiation there, that the directive coach is more like, here's what you're going to do every step along the way, and I'm just going to map that out for you, and you're just going to follow along. The more directive coach, of course, makes lots of suggestions, just all kinds of suggestions. It's just always suggestion. Did you think about this? Did you do this? What have you tried this? All those suggestions. The 5th way a directive coach could show up is really being rigid about the structure instead of allowing the structure and the process to be co-created. So even though the coach owns the process, we really want to create all of that with our client, right? We don't want to just be saying, well, this is exactly how it's going to go. We want to have the client identify the agenda. We want to dance in the moment with our client. We want to show up with that coaching presence. We want to go where the energy is. So we want to be flexible. So the directive coach is not going to really be that way. They're going to want to stick to every step along the way. What else? The more directive coach is going to present a lot of their own opinions and ideas versus sharing observations about the client. So it's all about the coach. Here's what I think. Here's what I think you should do. I think you should do this. I recommend this. That's great. So it's really all about the coach's opinions and ideas. And what we really want to do, as I said earlier, is we want to share our observations about the client. What I'm hearing is, it sounds like this. I'm noticing this. What I'm hearing is, I have that. All of those things that are really client-focused and client-centered. It's not about the coach. The 7th thing that the more directive coach would do is to not really listen very well, right? Listening's up at the other end of the spectrum. So they're not listening well. They're not being there with their client and using those active listening skills. So what they're doing is, again, they're more stuck in their own head, worried about what they're going to say next and how smart they're going to sound and all the, tips and tricks that they can give to sort of feed their ego versus really being there and listening into the client. And then the 8th thing that the overly directive coach does is sort of thinks that it's actually easier and that it saves time to just give the solution. We're running out of time. I don't want to waste this person's time. I'm just going to tell them what to do. It's easier to do that than actually go through the coaching process. So it's about providing that quick fix versus allowing the client to have an exploration, to learn and grow in their own way so that they can move on and, improve their health and well-being and develop new habits and keep those going over time. So those are some things that we don't want to do. And I just really wanted to give you sort of an example. Here are all the things that like effective directive coaching can look like that's still client-centered, and here's on the other end what that more directive coaching would be like. And again, hopefully you're falling somewhere there in the middle of the spectrum. You're using a combination of those things to really suit the client and their needs. Again, it always comes back to the client. So I hope that's really been helpful for you today to just clarify some of this. What can we do? What's effective directive coaching? And what does it look like on the other end of the spectrum? So I'd love it if you posted in the comments to let me know, which end of the spectrum are you on? Do you need to be more directive or do you need to be less directive? Where are you falling right now, and what skills do you really want to build so that you can find that balance and find your own style and rhythm as a coach? So thanks for tuning in. Again, if you have questions, comments, please post them below. And if you haven't yet joined my Facebook group, I'd love to have you come over and join us. The group is called Coaching Skills for Health Coaches by Michelle McLean. So hope to see you over there. Thanks for tuning in today, everyone. Have a great weekend. Bye for now.